Welcome, Miss Ellen Jones. Thank you. Listeners, we are very privileged today to have what I would say one of the best female water ski racers in the world on the rope with us to hear the journey of the first ever female water ski racing athlete to win all three categories at the IWWF World Water Ski Racing Championships. This one, I am so excited, not only because you are an absolute superstar, Ellen, but you are also a good friend of mine. And it's quite funny because we were meant to be recording this in person this weekend as you were flying down to run a half marathon with my husband and our good friend Lucy Savona. But due to this coronavirus lockdown, once again, we are on Zoom looking at each other through the screen. But I'm sure our conversation will be just as meaningful, but I would much prefer to had you here in my home in person and enjoy some time down here in freezing cold Melbourne. So thank you and welcome.
No, thank you for having me on. Yes, unfortunately, I will not be making the trip this weekend, but this will have to do for now.
It will, but don't stress, babe. Apparently it's going to be 8 degrees, 45-kilometre winds and raining tomorrow. So my little girl Mia and I will comfortably sit in the car watching them try and run 21 Ks in those conditions. So you'll have to keep an eye on Strava and see how they all go.
Yeah, I will. I'm gonna do it next weekend. I actually got shingles this week, last week. So it probably worked out okay that I'm not running 21 kilometers this weekend, but I do plan on doing my own little one this weekend. So I'll have to have a look at their times and make sure I keep up with it.
Good girl, good girl. Well, obviously Run Melbourne has been cancelled, so this is their own little half marathon as well. So good to hear you getting on board. But look, let's talk about you, all things Ellen Jones. Excited to hear all about it. And to get started, love to hear about how you got into the sport of water ski racing.
Well, my story, I guess, is pretty different to most people's. Most people kind of got in through their families doing it, but my family just kind of social skied on the river on weekends. And one day we saw somebody skiing past on the Hawkesbury River training with like a helmet and race ski and whatnot. And I just decided that it looked fun and thought that I wanted to give it a go. So at 9 years old, my parents took me to my first Tukli, and from there, that's how I got started.
How's that? So literally just a side bank watcher and just thought, what's this all about? Give me a go.
Yeah, apparently. So I get told anyways.
So your little 9-year-old brain started kicking very early, analysing what was going on in the world, and you want to be a part of it.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's really cool. So what did you got started at the age of 9? What did water skiing or water ski racing mean to you to make you still be in the sport near 14 years later?
I guess for me, like, I just instantly built a pretty big passion for the sport. Like, I absolutely love it to still have done it for so many years, and I'm just so competitive. And I guess I knew that I could see even at the age of 9 or like building up through the years, the harder you work, the better you get at it, the more successes you make. And I guess I was just eager to keep being successful. And yeah, I just started out at a young age. Like after my first Worlds, I set the goal to pretty much then and there to be the first female to win all three, because I knew that was possible for me. So yeah, once I set that goal and wanted to make it happen, I just kind of stuck to it.
Yeah, amazing. I tell you what, I was very proud team manager on the banks of Vichy when you pulled off that goal, and to see your face and your team's face and family face, absolutely unbelievable. And it's so cool that we have an Australian water ski racer to be the first ever female to win all three. Look, who inspired you to start that world's journey, or was it all just personally self-driven?
I guess like the world's journey in itself was pretty self-driven. I definitely did always want to do the worlds, but I would say my biggest inspiration always has been and always will be Anne Proctor. I don't know, I just always just always inspired me and always kind of been my hero in the sport. And so I guess you could say definitely she could be the inspiration.
Yeah, she's a pretty cool athlete. I must mention she was one of mine as well. But look, knowing Anne, she's got 3 F1 women's world titles. Does that give you something to continue to strive for?
Yeah, definitely coming off the back of last Worlds, I remember I was on a holiday. Jessie and I were in a place in, I don't even know where, I think we were in like Croatia or something. And I started getting online and looking at how many world titles were the most to get won by women. I was like, right, maybe I can make it my goal to win those world titles. But then obviously now I'm like, who knows what's going on and whatnot with the sport and coronavirus and whatnot. So definitely coming off the back of last Worlds, I was fired up and ready to do that. But for me now, I guess it's just waiting and seeing what's to come from everything that's going on in the crazy world right now.
Yeah, it's a bit of a time thing as well, isn't it? Let's hope, fingers crossed we can get back onto a Worlds like racing within 12 to 18 months, and that might get you back on track. But it's just the unknowns in the worldwide at the moment. So good news, the Olympics has kicked off though. So hopefully it's the start of international competitions, and we'll see how we go. But look, 100%. This podcast is all about you, and there's nothing more I want to hear about than your 4 world championship attempts, in which I can say I know that from the 4 times you've attended on the world stage, you have been crowned world champion 3 times in a row. Junior girls in 2015, F2 women's in 2017, and F1 women's in 2019. Some extremely impressive stats there, but talking from my own experience, I know that stats like that don't come off the back of something happening behind the scenes, and years and years of dedication, determination, resilience, and consistent goal setting and planning. So Ellen, I'm gonna literally, the floor is yours. I'd love you to talk us through your world championship journeys.
Yeah, well, it does feel like a lifetime ago. So like I said earlier, my memory may be a bit foggy. I feel like I'm suffering from short-term memory loss lately. But I guess I can start it back in 2013. I was actually just talking to my dad before I came on and did this with you, and I was talking to him, trying to get him to remind me of some things that happened in 2013. He actually reminded me that I started that Worlds campaign without a crew. Like, I pretty much, apparently mum and dad were searching for ages to get somebody to tow me, because back then juniors could still use inboards, and no one was keen to tow me. No one really believed in my success, and no one really was happy to kind of send an inboard over to Worlds for me if I did make it. So I actually couldn't get a run for the first Worlds until I got a hold of Denny Napick, and him and Darren Patterson were willing to tow me with an outboard. And then, yeah, sorry, we're going to say something? No? So yeah, then from there, I ended up getting on with them, and they started training me a bit. Surprisingly, I actually surprised myself making it to that Worlds as well. And then when I got there, I was obviously like one of the only outboards in juniors. So that was pretty overwhelming, but it probably turned out for the better. I learned to ski behind an outboard quite well, and I actually don't know what it would have been like if I was behind an inboard, to be honest. So yeah, 2013 Worlds, I went better than I expected. However, we did race that Worlds. Rachel Stapleton and I were pretty tough competition, and it did come down to the last race. So I don't think I was expecting to finish as close to her when I went into that Worlds, but then after the first couple of races, when I realized how close I was to her, I was so eager to actually be able to win that Worlds. Like, obviously you go over to a Worlds with the plan to win, but I was just nowhere near her when I actually went into that Worlds. So when I did get into it and I was so close to her, and then I missed by so close, that definitely put a lot of fire in my belly to then continue on with the rest of my Worlds campaign. So it was a really big, it was a kick in the guts, but it definitely drove me to train a lot harder, be a lot smarter going into my next Worlds and whatnot. And then from there, I did my next junior Worlds, which was in 2015. And from there, everyone actually had to ski behind outboards. So it was like everyone was in my backyard, which was nice. So yeah, we did that Worlds in New Zealand. So I don't actually remember a whole lot about that Worlds. I just remember that, it was in New Zealand. It wasn't that rough, which I was slightly disappointed by. I think
I think you've had a memory loss because it was in windy Wellington and one of the women's races got cancelled 25 minutes in because it was so rough.
That's true.
So I think your comment about it being not that rough is slightly misleading to the listeners.
Okay, maybe.
Race one was not that rough, and then the last three were crazy rough, in which one got cancelled 25 minutes in because it was near unskiable, and I think there was too much carnage on course, which I think you and I both didn't fall off, so that was a positive for us.
I
in that event,
remember this now. I actually remember watching the women's. I remember watching the women's actually, and it was so rough, and I thought they better not call this off. I want to ski in this. And then they called it off, and I was so dirty. I do remember that, actually.
Oh, so you missed that day. That day.
I didn't get to ski on that day. And then they reran it on a day that I was the smoothest day. So maybe that's what I just remember.
Okay, yes, I'll give you that one. Okay,
it was rough. Okay, it was rough.
Back to windy Wellington.
There's not. I guess I don't really have. I trained pretty hard for that Worlds, and that was probably like, you could say, my most smooth sailing. Not smooth sailing, but the competition was tough, but it wasn't as tough as what I had to go up against when I versed Rachel in Tenerife. So I feel like I was pretty prepared for that Worlds. So I was pretty lucky to get to take home the crown when I did the 2015 juniors. And then from there we went on and I trained for the 2017 Worlds, which was in Seattle. And I definitely could say I was probably a little bit underprepared for that Worlds. So I had done a bit of CrossFit, and I guess I definitely look back on that now and can see that maybe my commitments were kind of torn. I don't think that I was 100% committed to the Worlds like you need to be when you're doing a Worlds, and I look back on that now and know that. I went into that Worlds a little bit underprepared. I definitely think so. I raced Kaz Follington, and we were very tough competition. She was very hard to race. She definitely has a very strong mindset, which is where I find I've always kind of been competitive with. So that made that Worlds really tough. We were pretty neck and neck, and I fell in the third race and hurt my knee pretty badly. So I pretty much all but tore my MCL, and I was supposed to be in a brace for 8 weeks, but I had to ski the last race and not get beaten by a set amount. Otherwise I wouldn't win the Worlds. And so that last race was so stressful. I remember the 2 days before the last race, I was like going around doing cryotherapy, doing everything under the sun because my knee was so sore. And the last race I had to go out there and not get beaten by I think 50 seconds or might have been like 53 seconds. And I knew like I was in absolutely no state to keep up. Like Kaz and I were racing neck and neck on the best of days. And I think that she beat me by 50 seconds. So I think I won that Worlds by 3 seconds, which might have been 2 points on the board, which was just like a big slap in the face, that's for sure. I definitely learned my lesson, which was good. So yeah, I definitely took from that I was underprepared, didn't have my focus in the right place. So going into my last Worlds, I was all in 100%. I've definitely never been so focused and so prepared for a Worlds as I was for the 2019 Worlds. I was lucky enough to crew up for that Worlds with Stinger. So I had Greg Houston driving and Danny Nappick observing, who had kind of been my observer for quite a few years. So he'd observed since training for the Seattle Worlds. Danny Cropper. Did I say Danny Cropper? Yep. Yeah. Oh my gosh, what am I thinking? Yeah. So yeah, they were just like such a great crew to crew up with. So I definitely trained pretty hard for that one. I wanted to make sure that I was prepared as I possibly could be, but I think it got a little bit obsessive, to be honest. Like if I missed a day on the water, or like if someone couldn't get out to tow me, I'd have bloody mental breakdowns. Oh my gosh, it got a little bit severe. So yeah, training for that Worlds, I made sure that I was out on the water like twice a week, training as hard as I could, putting myself in like tough mental situations, because I just didn't want to leave anything on the table. I wanted to make sure that I was definitely prepared and that I couldn't potentially let it slip away from something silly. So yeah, that's pretty much that then.
I guess in 2019 too, it was your first time on the big stage in open women's, and there was some pretty big names amongst the mix of the field there. You had Madison Boyer, or Maddie Boyer, here in Victoria, obviously, also one of our good mates. But you also had Sabine Ortlieb from Austria, and Vicky Leeson's from Austria, and a couple of USA girls as well. But I mean, I know that myself, I wouldn't have known what name to put down on the table if someone asked me who was going to win between yourself, Maddie, and Sabine. You were three of the best in the business for the last probably 5-6 years at the world's level. So it was a pretty big lineup in regards to the top three fighting it out.
100%, yeah. I didn't know myself, to be honest. You are supposed to back yourself all the time, but yeah, I guess that comes down to why I was getting so like anxious and having like breakdowns if I couldn't get a run, because I knew that it was going to be such tough competition when we got over there, and it was definitely tough competition.
Yeah, look, I feel your pain. I know that going into Seattle, I was the same. I would literally chuck tantrums like my now 18-month-old child does if someone tried to pull out of a training session. I remember one day I rang 14 different boat drivers trying to get a driver. So yeah, I can feel your pain there, because you've set your goals and you've planned it out, and you know what you've got to do. And when something, unlike swimming or bike riding or marathon running, we can't do it solo. You need a team, and that's what makes it so difficult. You did mention in there that you said I made sure that I put myself in all these challenging positions, and you got a bit upset when things didn't go your way, and brought back a memory of mine, Ellen, that I want to jump back to in 2017 when you and I were both out at Brooklyn. Just coincidence that we were training at the same time. And it was a very, very rough day. I was out there with Daniel Cotton and Daniel Graziano, the two masters, giving me, the apprentice, some education. And we idle out, and it was ginormous. And I've got my rail on, because the boys are like, it's big. And next minute I see there goes Ellen Jones past on a freeboard, and I go to the boys, what the hell is this girl doing? And I remember I got up and struggled to get around on a rail, and I got in the boat, and I go, how is she doing it on a freeboard? And Grat said, oh, look, she's come off about 10 to 15 times, but she's persistent. She keeps getting back up. And I remember afterwards I said to you, I said, Ellen, what are you doing? Why are you on a freeboard? And your response was politely, well, that was the only way Jessie would observe for me if I went on a freaking freeboard. And you were furious. Do you remember that training day out in Brooklyn?
Yes, I definitely do. So at that time, Jessie was training a lot for his CrossFit, and we all know that observing is not the pleasantest of jobs out in Brooklyn. It's pretty rough. And he told me the only way he would take me out is if I skied on a freeboard, and I hadn't even ever skied on a freeboard out there, and it was humongous. Oh my gosh. I remember just going off the top of a swell and honestly pin dropping into the water and then face planting. And I was so sad. And I was like, this is the day I'm going to get eaten by a shark, 100%.
But is it the resilience? See, to me, when I look back on that story, I think it's the resilience in you that has made you the first ever female to win all three categories at the IWWF World Championships. Because let's be honest, there's a lot of athletes that wouldn't have stayed out there for an hour pin dropping off a freeboard in conditions that I would say honestly would have been 2 to 3 meters swell. And I remember being on a rail struggling to push my ski forward enough to not fall off, and I had bindings on. So, there's stories like that. And I think the good thing is to share something like that, the listeners don't see what happens behind the scenes. So you've just spoken through from 2013 to 2019, winning 3 world titles and getting a silver medal in the 4th. Like it was a breeze, but you and I both know that's not the case. And behind every athlete, there is one hell of, there's one hell of a lot of hard work that goes on. There is times where you're out of bed at hours that you don't want to be out of bed. Give us a little bit of an insight into what a day in the lead up to a World Championships would look like for you, especially Vichy. You talk about how you left no stone unturned.
Yeah, I did kind of just breeze over everything, didn't I? I should have probably dived in a little bit more. In regards to Vichy, like you said, I did kind of set myself out a plan leading up to it. I am a big believer in kind of not tiring yourself out, and I think that my plan probably nailed right on the week of. I think if I did another week of training like I did, I would have been brown bread. But I kind of planned out my weeks, and I would make sure in every week I would go for a doubles run on the river, because I knew people like Maddie that I was competing against were so strong at skiing fast. And from what I had heard, I knew you had to ski fast in that first part of Vichy. And I also knew based off selections that like these girls are definitely stronger than me in this fast part of the kind of racing. So I made a big effort after selections to get out on these, like I was on these humongous doubles. They were Cameron Osborne's doubles, so the boots were like 3 times too big for me. But I would go out on them once a week just to try and make sure I could get that time under tension, get my legs like nice and strong. And I just made sure I had whoever I could get to observe was out there observing for me. My mum actually, this is a funny story, but my mum hated observing for me. One day I forced her to come out and observe, and I actually hit a log and the fin got ripped out of one of the doubles. So I cartwheeled for so long, and my poor mum, I've come back, I was so winded, and my mum's bawling her eyes out in the boat. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, cool, you're not hurt. So yeah, I would make sure I got that doubles run in, rain, hail or shine. That was a big priority. I also would do a lot of bike erg intervals. So Jessie would write me up these kind of intervals on a bike. I don't know if you've heard of a bike erg, but I think you probably have one. But it kind of, they blow up your quads quite similar to the way skiing does, in my opinion. Anyway, Jessie would set me these targets that I remember so clearly. I would do them every Tuesday morning, and Jessie's mum would actually come out in the gym with me on Tuesday mornings, and I would cry every single Tuesday because he would make the targets so hard, but I wouldn't not get to them, but getting them to the targets would mean that I would cry because I was like, no, I guess my mentality that I wouldn't let myself fall short of them, but yeah, I would push my body so hard that it would end up in tears. So that was one big component of my training. I definitely just made sure I got them in. I trained CrossFit like 5 days a week on top of that. I also made sure I did like another big endurance session once a week, whether it be like rowing, running, ski erging, and then I would ski a second time a week. So I made sure I kind of just had a list of things that had to get done in a week, and I made sure that I got them done. And I guess I'm also, this caused me a lot of fights as well with Jessie leading up to the Worlds. But when I've always skied with Denny Cropper, he's a big believer in kind of like pushing yourself in your training runs to your 80-90%, I guess. And I got so used to doing that in my Seattle Worlds. At the beginning of my Vichy Worlds, Denny was really sick, so I actually had to get different people to observe, and a lot of the time it was Jessie, and Jessie wouldn't take my ups, and he wouldn't let me ski on the edge or be loose. And so we ended up bluing a lot in the boat because he was like, no, you're too out of control, I can't do this anymore. And he stopped observing for me, so I had to find a new observer.
Look, I think having your partner observe for you is always riddled with danger. I've had a few scenarios where that's been the case as well. I think it's best for the relationship to keep them separate.
I learned that lesson quickly, that's for sure. But yeah, I guess in summary, like a big thing for me, or a day in the life, I feel like I went on a bit of a tangent then, but a day in the life of training for me leading to that Vichy Worlds, like I always pushed myself to my absolute limits. I made sure that I had rest days like programmed in there so I could recover physically and mentally, but definitely just like you do need to push your body and be fit enough, but training your mind mentally is just so important in my opinion. So yeah, that was a quick summary of a week in the life of leading to Worlds, I guess.
It's cool that you just at the end touched on that, because I was about to ask it and you touched on it, is that training your mind. Did you train your mind through pushing yourself to the extreme, or was there mental training, meditation, creative visualization, anything you did alongside the physical, or was the physical enough for you to be mentally strong enough?
I guess if I can like jump it back a few years to kind of explain my mental training. Back when I did 2013 Worlds, I did a lot of training with Alex Ross. He just took me on and helped me with a lot of my training, but his training, like, it wasn't really about being fit. It was a lot about mental training. And I don't think if I guess my mentality, yes, is competitive, but if I didn't do that with him, I don't think I would have had the mental strength that I do today. So he really put a lot of focus in training your mind mentally and pushing yourself beyond points so that you're ready for those situations. And I guess as I've developed fitness and become fitter, I've just taken that on board with it. So when I had done Vichy Worlds, I kind of had already had the mindset of knowing how to push my mind mentally. And then, yeah, I just kind of continued to take that on. I wouldn't say I ever did meditation, probably should have done meditation, but yeah, for me, it was just like pushing my mind's limits on the regular so that I knew that any kind of mental situation that was thrown at me, I'd be able to take it on board.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think that by the sound of what you've just said, then it's you have had that mental training early on and you've just continued to carry it. But totally agree with you. You can't do one or the other. You've got to have the mental strength and the physical strength. But I agree. I found that as I got the physical strength and knew that I had trained every day, left no stone unturned, that the mental strength is accelerated through knowing that you are prepared. Like you said, you went to Vichy knowing you were prepared. And there was times in Vichy when it could have been anyone's. The first few races, there was a few different people on the podium, on the top podium, as you know, and you were the one that held that consistency through the championships, and that takes mental and physical strength. So it's good to get a bit of insight. And Alex Ross, man, isn't he awesome? Like, anyone that can front flip and back flip on a water ski and side slide, he's definitely the man. That's for sure. He's one of the best. Now, one of my it's one thing I loved out of everything you just said, Ellen, is that you cried in the gym, and I'm glad to hear that, because I would be shocked if any water skiing world champion hasn't cried in the gym. I definitely had a few crying sessions, like you said, where I'm an hour and 30 minutes into a Craig Burton program and realised I've still got probably a quarter to go and think, what the hell is this for? I only ski for 45 minutes. And I think sometimes, isn't it, I think it's pushing to the boundary and that past your mental barrier that you even knew was there. And then sometimes you do break into tears, but at the end of the day, you know you've got to do it. So I'm glad that a 3-time world champion's also cried in the gym. You just made me feel a little bit better about myself, so thank you.
I'm glad it made you feel better.
Now, my co-presenter, Mr. Dave Bishop, had a question. He wanted to know, how do you prepare for a worlds like Vichy when the water conditions were never going to be able to be replicated here in Australia? You all trained for something that you couldn't replicate in Australia. Was there anything different you did, or you just followed the normal? You've talked about the doubles and the speed at the start. That was more to increase your weakness. But what about in the fact of like concrete walls? You're racing in a canal, like it's like a channel here in Australia that you girls were racing. They're only 60, 70 meters wide, and they're concrete walls, and you can't replicate that. So is there any way, or you just ran with the Brooklyn still and just muscled through?
No. So actually, I guess Brooklyn was always my home training ground. I kind of had always trained there for my first 3 worlds. But when I started skiing with Stinger, they actually train at Botany Bay, which I was like, oh, very uncomfortable about the situation to begin with, because you learn to love where you train. And when it actually turned out to be probably for the better. So at Botany Bay, we kind of just did a little short course, and I hated it originally. I couldn't hate anything more than doing small laps for bloody an hour straight. All I wanted to do was go back to Brooklyn and do nice big laps, go down the coastline. But it honestly, the more and more I did it, I realized it was for the better, because I was going to have to do short, small laps when I got over there. But in terms of the water, there was honestly no way to replicate it. Like I definitely, all of us were, unless you had skied like over in Belgium, you were definitely going into the unknown. And I knew that first race definitely was the unknown, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's it's true. I've been privileged to do a diamond race, and there is no way you could replicate those conditions here in Australia. It's just totally impossible. Canals are just a beast of their own. But you did just explain. So Bisho, there's your answer, mate. She went to Botany Bay and she did short, sharp laps, which, as you said, Ellen, that would send any water skier crazy, because you're just literally an hour of doing short, sharp laps. But that's what you did in Beachy. So by the time you got there, you were used to it.
Yeah. But in saying that, doing short laps and or whatnot, I definitely, you either, to the real answer to his question is you can't duplicate it, in my opinion. I just remember skiing over there thinking like, wow, I have never ever skied over waves like this in my whole life. It was just crazy.
Don't worry, I was 26 weeks pregnant, and I was happy to be standing on the bank cheering you all on, that's for sure.
My family actually would never go down the rough end to watch me, because they just said that I was too loose and it was too out of control, so they just wouldn't even watch me down there.
Well, as you know, my husband was out there in F2 men's, and I was very similar to your family. I just didn't go down the rough end at all, because I just didn't want to put my body through that sort of stress level. To be honest, I didn't want to put it through with any of you. I was so nervous for every Aussie skier. So I was just sitting under the team tent, counting laps for you and doing your times. That was about it. So
it was. Sorry.
No, you go.
Oh no, I was just going to say it was definitely touch and go. I don't think even if you felt like you had it under control down there, which I don't think anyone probably really did, you definitely didn't look like you had it under control. Even the best of skiers still looked loose down there.
Exactly. Yeah, totally agree. Now, you mentioned through your World Championships talk how you went into 2017 probably slightly unprepared, and you faced a few challenges because of that, and winning that world title by 3 points, which nearly could have shattered your whole three in a row and winning all three categories back to back to back. But you pulled through by 3 points off the amazing Karen Follington, who actually had made a comeback into the sport not long prior to, so impressive effort on her behalf. But as part of that journey, when you spoke through that, you mentioned the word CrossFit. Now, I think we have to notify the listeners that no wonder you went into that slightly unprepared or slightly imbalanced in regards to where your focus was, because correct me if I'm wrong, but you attended the 2016 CrossFit Games as an athlete, as an Australian athlete, as part of the CrossFit Games teams in juniors. And as for those listeners who know the sport of CrossFit, that is absolutely phenomenal to make the top 10, to be able to attend a CrossFit Games, whilst also part of the world team to go and ski over in Seattle. So love to hear a bit about that experience. You sort of, again, undersold yourself. Oh, I was juggling CrossFit and water skiing, but you failed to mention that you actually attended the CrossFit Games. It's just absolutely phenomenal. I just in awe of what you've achieved from such a young age. But let us hear a little bit about that experience and how it differed, how CrossFit Games differed from a world championship.
So pretty much it started in 26. Well, I've kind of done CrossFit throughout my 2015 Worlds campaign, so I was obviously doing it quite a bit for training for ski racing, and I thought I'd give the Open a bit of a crack because my partner was already doing it, whatnot. So I did the Open for CrossFit whilst I was skiing with you during the 2016 two-up season. So I remember kind of training for doing the Open, and then I would bloody jump in the car and drive to Victoria and then ski. I do not know how I did it now looking back. How in the world did I do that? But yeah, so I ended up making that. I actually just don't even know how. I still say that it was kind of a fluke, but it was kind of top 10 worldwide, got to go across and do the teens for the 16 to 17 divisions. And I guess it was just such a different experience to ski racing, because while I am a very competitive person, I obviously wanted to go well. I remember at the start, before events, I wouldn't feel the way I feel before races, like the immense amount of pressure that I put on myself to be successful in ski racing. And also, obviously, there's the nerve of it being an extreme sport. Like, your stomach churns in a completely different way than it would when you're going out to do some exercise against some people. So the experience in that regards of being nervous and whatnot was completely different, but it was something that I definitely take on, like doing another sport in a competitive way, like learning how to exercise under such high intensity was something that I was able to take on board and then help me with my training even further. And yeah, it was cool to definitely do something different and compete against like amazing athletes across the world in something completely different, that's for sure. But yeah, that's about that. But I guess then, yeah, going on from there, I continued kind of juggling CrossFit and ski racing. So that's what led to my kind of focus being quite split when I went into that 2017 Worlds, because I did the 2017 regionals as a team athlete in Australia. And that was like 2 months before I flew out for Worlds in July. So definitely something that made it touch and go for me when I was in Seattle.
Oh, you just top 10 in the world to get to those CrossFit games, 16 to 17-year-old too. So it's just unbelievable. That in itself sells how you've had such a strong mindset. But I love the point where you just touched on it was a very different churn in the gut, in the fact of you said, I was just going out to train against other athletes in comparison to water ski racing, where it is an extreme sport. There are risks. And I think some of the listeners, no doubt, are in awe of us female water ski racers, because I don't know, people always said to me, especially family members and stuff that don't ski race, so aunties, uncles, cousins, like, do you not fear for your life? Do you not get worried doing those sort of speeds? But for me, it's the adrenaline that I love so much about the sport. I just loved going fast. I loved getting challenged in the bay. I just loved, I loved the fear factor of the sport. Is that something that kept you engaged in the sport as well? Like you sort of compared the two, like, oh, CrossFit's just working out with other people, and skiing gets my gut churning. I'm like, whoa, I'm about to do this, Is that something that's kept me in the sport?
100%. Like, I guess that's why we do it. Otherwise, everyone would do the sport if it wasn't for the kind of the thrill of the adrenaline. And like I said, like even just going out and training, like I liked to ski at my 90%. I want to be on edge because that's the challenge that skiing brings to me. Like if I'm out there twiddling my thumbs, I'm like, what's the point of doing this right now? So yeah, definitely the thrill and the adrenaline rush is so important to keep you going in it.
I agree. I totally agree. And I think that's why we are so driven to train so hard too. I know that all gym sessions that I daily used to train as well for river racing and for world titles. And I think the gym sessions, you would just in your mind know, like, this has got to get done, and it's got to get done at high intensity, and it's got to be hard, and I've got to be pushing myself to the edge, because on that ski, that's where I want to be. And you can't be there safely without doing all that behind the scenes stuff. So it was just really cool that I've never asked that direct question. What's the difference between being on the CrossFit Games floor to on the deck of a boat before you started a world's race? And you just absolutely hit the nail on the head in regards to how you felt. So thanks for sharing that with us. It's really cool. But look, you have sustained such a high level in this sport for so long, and from such a young age. Like, you competed in your first world title when you were 13, 12 years old. So I'd love to know how have you sustained that success, and your body and mind sustained that success?
I think I guess when I was skimming over things, I've touched on this very briefly, but I've always been such a big believer in not burning yourself out. And I know that it is something that does happen to a lot of people when they start so young. So for me, like, I made sure not to let people, I know you probably know this too, but you hear about your competitors training and they're out skiing, you're like, oh my gosh, I better get out skiing for the next Worlds. But if I kind of knew that I could do selections without being out and doing lots of training on the water, I would prolong training on the water until I had actually made the team. So pretty much for each Worlds, I didn't do very much on water training until selections was done, because for me, training on the water and going out to Brooklyn and going out to Botany Bay is something like I genuinely enjoy doing, Whereas if I was to do that for a whole year leading up to Worlds, I think I would lose the love for it. So I made sure that like training for that, going out on the water, was something that kind of only got done and really amped up in like the last 4 months, 5 months leading up to Worlds, and then definitely just went hard from there on out. And then once Worlds was over, I would stop for a while, have a bit of a break, only do kind of the races that came up, wouldn't do heaps of skiing out training, do selections, and then like hit training really hard out in the ocean again. So yeah, for me, it was just definitely kind of making sure that I wasn't consistently doing it, giving myself breaks so that I could still love it rather than it be a chore.
Really, really good information to share. And I think extremely critical part to sustaining success is making sure that you love it. You used that word a few times. I love training in Brooklyn. I didn't want to lose the love for it. And it's so true. You don't want it to become a burden, right? We do this because we love it. We're unfortunately amateur, unpaid athletes. It'd be super cool if we could be paid athletes and do this as a job, but we don't. And if anything, it costs us a lot of money. I remember that most of my university and high school studies was based on the fact that I needed money to water ski. So, it costs money. It doesn't make money. So you need to love it. And that's what we do it. And there's this really cool motivational video that's like, if you don't love it, you ain't going to make it type thing, and it's so true. You got to love it. You got to want to jump out of bed at 4 or 5 a.m. to get down there in Botany Bay or Brooklyn and hit the water, don't you? So
100%.
Some great feedback there. Look, we can't do this sport without a circle of people, as we spoke about when you and I both had tantrums over people pulling out of training last minute. And so important to know who's in your circle, who's been. I know you, thankfully, thank you for explaining all your world's crews. So we're across all of those, and you and I share one thing in common. I just found out, which I actually did know but didn't link, that Darren Patterson observed for both of us in our first ever junior worlds. Mine, this might illustrate our age gap, although we're very good friends. Mine in 2001 and yours in 2013.
Yeah.
But Pat observed for both of us, which is pretty cool. And I think a good observer to have on a junior worlds, because he doesn't miss a beat, that bloke. I don't know how he knows when you're comfortable and when you're not, but he does. But who was critical in your circle outside of just your crews? Because I know the crews get the recognition, but for me personally, there was 5 or 6 people that weren't in my race crew that absolutely helped me win my world title. And I have no doubt, without those 6 people that trained and did all the hard work and hours behind the scenes, I wouldn't have become a world champion. So who was in your circle?
Well, obviously, definitely my family. Like, I've been fortunate enough that I've raised from such a young age that obviously, like, without my family's support and without their funding, then none of it would have been ever possible. So my family definitely hits top of the list, that's for sure. My partner, Jesse, I've been with him since I was a spring chicken. So he pretty much have been with him since I was literally 14. So he's obviously been such a big support, and he, like, from my New Zealand worlds, he's been the one who's helped me with training, who's helped push me mentally. He's a bit of a tough person to please. So you're always trying to make sure, like, you're achieving his targets and everything. So definitely he's the person who's helped me physically and mentally. But in regards to last worlds, definitely could not have done my training without Bob Robinson, so Stephen Robinson, and Jack Houston. They were like my absolute rocks for training. They had no obligation to take me training, but they were always there for me and always supporting me. And in the back end of my Worlds campaign, I had a lot of help also from Carter Robinson's dad, Paul. He took me out training a lot, and then their observer, Evan. So I was very lucky to have a few people who just really helped me get through that were outside of my crew, but definitely big emphasis on Bob and Jack, and especially Jack Houston. He was just like, he honestly did everything for me last Worlds. He would drive me to training. He would take me on my doubles runs. I could not have done that Worlds without him being there for me. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's good to share the names, because I just know the amount of effort that goes into winning these world titles, and those people in the background, although they don't expect recognition, they 110% deserve it. They make us look good, that's for sure. So Bob Robbo, I love that guy, and he was also your team captain. So he also got to enjoy your world championship open women's win as your team captain. So at least his training paid off for him as well. He got a gold medal. So good on Bubster. And I also know he's a frequent attendee in your gym as well. So when he goes to gym,
when he goes,
yeah. So
he frequently attends once a week.
Good boy. Well, once a week's better than none, isn't it? So look, I got to jump in here. Julie Jones, well, no doubt she's going to listen. She's your mum, but block your ears, Julie. You did mention that you and I got to ski together when you were competing in the CrossFit Games, and you were an absolute trooper scooting down to Victoria to ski with me. At the time, you were 16 years old, and I think our observer for that season and my observer, Christian Apps, continually reminded me that you're only 1 year older than his daughter, and he didn't feel that safe and correct pulling you as quick as we were back then. But I remember we had a pretty cool race, and you had I think you competed on the Friday, or you had to compete the Monday or something for the CrossFit Games to get into the CrossFit Games. And that was the Robinvale 80. And you came down, and I remember you just being so nervous about it all, because you're like, I haven't done much skiing and got the CrossFit Games on. I was like, babe, stress less. We're having some fun. We had Trent Sauer, the big Merc Force F1 machine. And we're like, literally, it's just going to be fun. And I remember Julie saying to Apsy, don't pull her over 100 and don't do this and don't do that. And Apsy's like, oh, my God, I keep forgetting this girl's nearly the age of my daughter. And that race, we went on and won Open Women's and got the race record in that 2016 Robinvale race. And Julie, as I said, block your ears, because I think we actually hit 111 or 112 mile an hour or something in that race. Which was all you waving up, because we said it's your race, Ellen. You do what you want. But yeah, I remember you being so stressed because you were sort of like, I don't do much of this river racing quick stuff and all of this. And I tell you what, girl, you definitely pulled it off that day. That's for sure.
Yeah, I remember that actually. I remember my dad actually was at home looking at the race safe, and it came up with our top speed, and he called my mum straight away and told her how fast we went.
I was going to say, was that pre-race safe days, but clearly not. So I'm sure
no,
Julie
it wasn't
would have been
pre-race safe.
Oh shit! Well, that's not good, is it? We can't hide that. But anyway,
nah,
look,
six. Right.
I remember getting back to the bank, hearing what time we'd done and all of that, and then sort of looking at you going, oh my God, you're 16 years old. Like, what have we just done? But anyway, we pulled it off, and you wanted it. So that was pretty cool. Look, it's a pretty cool memory for me anyway, that's for sure. Now,
it was definitely cool.
Yeah, and as you said, we love going fast, us girls. That's why we do this crazy sport of water ski racing. So I tell you what, I can't wait to get back on the ski. At 37 weeks pregnant, sitting here waiting for this baby to come out so I can get back on the ski. That's one of my main goals post this baby number 2 is to get back out there. That's for sure. I hope my mum's not listening now, because she'll ring and abuse me for that comment. Well, how funny that we're still scared of our parents, although we're adults. But anyway. Now, you mentioned how Bub come to the gym, and you obviously you mentioned how Jesse's a hard taskmaster and has been a CrossFit Games athlete from a regional perspective and team regional perspective on multiple occasions. So he's a well profound athlete himself in the CrossFit world. Your partner Jesse Burns, but I know that you have had some involvement training some of our junior athletes, and I know a lot of our juniors look up to you. You're an absolute superstar. We're very lucky to have an athlete and someone of your intelligence level in our sport. And I know that, you've taken some of them on board and training them in yours and Jesse's gym down in the Hawkesbury there. Can you give us a little bit of insight into sort of what you do and how that little side business works for you?
I do train a couple of juniors here and there for people who obviously want to get stronger and whatnot for ski racing. And mainly I just focus on getting them like a little bit stronger, because I found throughout my years when I was younger, as soon as I became a bit stronger, skiing was just instantly a whole lot easier. So getting quite a bit more strength, but just learning how to like tackle harder workouts. Like I said, building up a bit of the mental training to prepare them for skiing, and just like a bit of that long distance workouts, kind of knowing how to get through that mentally. That's mainly what I focus on with them there.
And a little birdie told me, though, that you take that service one step further and you actually reach out to all your junior athletes post races, ask them how they felt, if they felt any weaknesses, so that you can then tailor their programs back in the gym. Is this correct?
Yeah, I guess so. I always will chat to them post race, like when I see them kind of the following week, and make sure that we are getting on top of any problems that they might have faced when they were racing. So yeah, I guess so.
It's so funny because I see you as a junior myself, and here you are coaching our next generation, and I just love that. It's so inspiring that we've got an athlete like yourself that is putting time back in. I'm sure you are well aware how much I am passionate about juniors in the sport of water ski racing and the future of our sport down here, especially in Victoria, where I can try and make a difference. But it's good that we've got someone like yourself up there doing a very similar thing and supporting the juniors. And off the back of that, love to get your take on Junior Worlds. What's your opinion about Junior Worlds? Do you think it's good for athletes to be thrown into such a competitive environment at a young age? Or, have you of the views where you think that potentially we could wait until we're 18 and older to actually attend the world stage?
I do know this is quite a controversial topic that does get spoken out about throughout skiing, but being someone who has competed in 2 junior worlds myself and continued on so many years later, like I am a huge believer in junior worlds. But in saying that, like people who are doing junior worlds have to be doing it for themselves. Like I think in the sport of ski racing, in any worlds, you have to do it for yourself, for you to, like I said, enjoy it, still love it for many years down the track. Like I know a lot of people are concerned about junior worlds burnouts and all the rest of that, but like I said, I believe if people are in there doing it for themselves, not going too crazy with the training, just doing what they need to do to make it happen, then there's the potential for people not to burn out. I think people probably burn out when they lose their love for it. My take on junior worlds, I'm a believer in it, and I would love to see it continue happen. That's for sure.
Well, that's good. And you are right. It is a controversial topic. And I'm, to be honest, I'm a bit of a fence sitter because I agree with everything you've just said for an athlete like yourself. But then I also do see athletes where there's potentially more pushing behind the scenes, and then we lose them out of the sport post junior worlds because it's all being too much. And as you said, they begin that phase of hating training and hating the sport. So I think there is the hard thing is it does come down to the individual athletes, and at such a young age, that's where it is really hard decisions. I'm a fence sitter. I'm like you. I did juniors when I was, just turned 15 years old, and I was in the sport 26 years later. So I think it depends on the individual, but it is a very controversial topic, and it's good to get your opinion because I think it's important that we hear about all the different athletes who have competed at the junior levels and how that's affected them. So thanks for sharing that with us. Off the back of that, you've been in the sport, like I said, near 14 years yourself. Who would you have to say would be one of the toughest competitors over your whole journey from right through? Who's someone that you just always used to roll up to a race and think, oh gosh, not you again? We've all got one.
To be honest, I guess every world's like you've obviously go up against people different every worlds and worlds to world, like every single time I've had tough competition. But I would guess, like when you say that, the first person that comes to my mind is Rachel Stapleton. I guess I raced her in that first worlds, and we were honestly like, there was photos of us where it could have looked like we were skiing together. We were just kind of like neck and neck the whole way. And from there, every single time that we've raced, pretty much we actually always end up neck and neck. So, but I wouldn't say, I don't think, oh God, I actually enjoy racing her so much because it challenges me so much. And I've always said that I would have loved to have got to do an F1 Worlds against her, but unfortunately I never got to do that. Just because, she just is just my person that I've always had tough competition against. But in saying that, like Kaz Follington was so hard to race, and Maddie and Sabine too were just like such tough competition to beat. So I can't say that they weren't tough as well.
No, they're all tough, but what you mean is, and Rachel's your girl that's always, you race Rachel a lot more too. Like for me, it's Maddie, and I think it's because in New South Wales, you and Rachel would race a lot. And in Victoria, Maddie and I race a lot, but I'm like you, it was never like, oh no, Maddie's here. It was like, oh, do we want to go to that race if Maddie's not going? Like, it's sort of, you enjoy that competition. And it's your person because you're 100%. Racing against them majority of the time. Like, you're always up against them. So you're always challenged against them. So no, everyone's a tough competitor. There's no doubt about that. But there's always usually someone in your journey that's been there a fair chunk of it, pushing you to your limits. I remember one Wagga, Maddie and I actually drew to the 100th of a second. Like, the judges are like, we literally can't. And we started, like, Maddie started pole 4 or 5 or something, and I started pole 15 in Wagga. Like, we weren't even near each other. So we're at totally different sections of the course at all times, and we drew. Like, it's like, that's how close our racing was for our whole careers, like, which is so cool. Because like you said, you want that. You don't want to be out there by yourself. You need that.
Yeah.
And then you both get better because you're both pushing.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Like, I used to think, like, if you're going to a race where you didn't have a couple of people that you knew were going to challenge you completely, you're like, oh, what's the point of even going today? So you always want to make sure, like, that's why you do the sport, I guess, to be constantly challenged. So yeah.
Agreed. The challenge is what we're all chasing. That's what we all train for. So you what's the best, if I said to you, I want one of the best fitness tips and best dietary tips you've ever received, what would you feed out to the listeners?
This one kind of stuns me a little bit. I don't really have a dietary tip, to be honest. I couldn't actually tell you that one.
Lucy's not going to be happy with that comment.
I know, honestly, she's not.
At least say a balanced plate or something.
Definitely. I think that for me, it's just making sure you feel in your body. Like, obviously you can't, I definitely think, like, calorie deficits or not eating enough food is definitely not the way to go when you're training hard for a sport like this. Making sure you're eating plenty of food. That's definitely my diet trip. In regards
so you're on the same page as the nudie foodie then, for those listeners that don't have the nudie foodie on Instagram. Lucy Savona, one of our very own water ski racing female athletes as well. She is massive on, as Ellen just said, fueling the body appropriately, not starving yourself. So jump on at the nudie foodie and check that out. Hey, Ellen.
Yeah, hopefully I did Lucy proud in that comment.
And from a fitness perspective, it doesn't have to be an actual workout. It can be like actual consistency or whatever you think is the best thing that someone's giving you in regards to fitness advice to keep at the top of your game.
In regards to fitness advice, probably making sure you have scheduled rest days. Like, it's so important. Like I said, those last few months leading up to, like, what you're training for, making sure that you're getting rest in and recovering your body is so important.
And it's funny,
isn't it? Any tips?
Well, I've got one that I'll share in a sec, but it's funny that you say rest days, right? Like, as if like you've got to have them, because most people would be like, oh God, I love rest days. But when you're in the zone, I remember in the lead up to both New Zealand Worlds and Seattle Worlds, when a rest day was in my thing, I would be like, can I do yoga? Can I at least do this? Like, I would just not want to rest, because I'm like, my competition mightn't be resting. And my trainer would be like, you need to rest your body. So you're going to rest. You're not going to do anything. You want to stretch for 5 minutes, go ahead. But, I think it's hard as an athlete to rest, which sounds crazy for some listeners, but that's an awesome tip. One of the best tips that I received was off Wayne Moore. And he said to me, the only person that's going to get you out of bed at 4 and 5 a.m. in the morning to train is yourself. He's like, if you think anyone else cares about your success, you are wrong. And I just remember, like, it just embedded in my head, and it embedded in my head just in life in general. If you think anyone else is going to come and help you win something or achieve your goals, you're wrong, including your own partner. Like, no one else can do it. You've got to do it yourself. And I think, to me, that was the best fitness tip, because it wasn't about a workout. It wasn't about a certain way to do something. It was like, if you want to get it done, you've got to do it. Like, and that comes back to that. What happens behind the scenes? Like, everyone sees us at the Southern 80 or at the world titles on the deck of the boat or getting that, first place trophy. And they're like, oh, wow, how lucky. That's so cool. But they don't realize that we've done like 20 to 30 hours of work every week behind the scenes to make that happen, and it's so true. Like, I just think rest days, rest days mixed with the fact of coming to the realization you're the only one that's going to make it happen is pretty important. Now, we have held you up for a fair bit of time. Not that there's much we can both do in lockdown, hey, but
no, don't have many places to be right now.
No, we're both pretty safe to keep chatting. But what I do want to know is what's in the future for you? Like, where are you heading? And this is just and who's Ellen outside of ski racing? Like, ski racing's one party of life, but where are you heading from a sport perspective, but also from a professional perspective? Because this was something I did pick your brain on last time we caught up down here in Melbourne, and you had a massive career shift, and I was like, hang on a minute, that's not what you were doing. So who's Ellen outside of ski racing?
Yeah, well, I guess originally I am passionate about the health and fitness scene, and obviously I've grown up training my whole life, so I always thought that I would want to do something in the health and fitness kind of industry. But I guess I had a bit of a career shift probably about a year and a bit ago now, and I'm doing a construction management degree. So Ellen outside of ski racing is a lot of study, a lot of work, and just that back and forth, really, study and work. But yeah, I'm currently doing that degree, and then with the hopes to do project management in the future. So yeah, that's me.
So we might see the sexy 3-time blonde water ski racing world champion on a job site with a hard hat telling all the boys how to do their job.
That's the goal. That is the goal. And I usually try and work pretty hard to make my goals happen.
Oh, I love it. I love it. It's so good. It's so good to hear that you are, considering a career in project management, which is probably heavily male-driven career as well, to be honest. So that's really cool. Have I still got you there?
Hey.
That's okay. Did your battery run out?
No, I got a call, and then I thought I was declining the call, but I was actually answering the call.
Don't worry, the same thing happened to Caitlin went, that's all right, I'll get them to chop this tiny little bit out. So that's all good. All right, so what we were saying, we're talking about project management. All right, so I'm just going to finish off on that's really cool, and then I'll go, you've spoken about your career, but what about the future of Ellen in water ski racing, and then see what you got to say with that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we'll start again. Well, thanks for sharing that. That's very interesting. We'll see Ellen Jones amongst the men on the job site. Love it. It is good. Mind you, you'll be the big boss lady in the office. You won't have to go out to the dirty job sites much. But good to know what you're doing outside of the sport of water ski racing. But what does the future hold inside the sport of water ski racing? I know there's some uncertainty at the moment, but let's pretend we're going to get over that little COVID-19 disaster and we're back on the water. What's your thoughts moving forward for the sport of water ski racing?
Yeah, given that if COVID is to go in kind of the near future, my goal obviously would be to continue on. I'd love to keep doing like the classics. I was loving them. Like I said, before this all happened, like I was absolutely loving ski racing, loving all the classics. So the goal would be to kind of continue on doing them, and then see where it all goes. For me, like doing another Worlds and whatnot is definitely about making sure I have the right crew behind me. So I wouldn't jump in and say 100% that's where I'm going, but I'm definitely not closed off to any of that. That's for sure.
The world is still your oyster. You're still got a fair few years ahead of you, and in between now and then you've had a nice rest as well, so it'll give you some time to rethink and rebalance and get back into it. And you're going to head down to Victoria in October. You and I are in a bridal party together, the Cuff wedding. So I can't wait for that, and we'll be able to have a bit of a dance floor and cocktail session that weekend, I have no doubt. So we love having you down here. We always laugh, don't we? Because I think you've skied with more Victorian females in river racing than you have with New South Wales. So we we pretty much own you.
Yeah, pretty much Victorian.
Yeah, we would look. We are more than happy to claim you, our 3-time world champion. We're happy to have you here in Victoria. All of us Victorian girls love you. We've tag team skiing with you, that's for sure. And everyone's really enjoyed always having you on their team. You're an absolute asset to any team. So I'm sure if there is another world champion in the championships in the near future, it won't take you long to find the right crew to make it happen. So look, Ellen Jones, love you to death, girl. You are an absolute superstar of the sport. I am just in awe of the fact that from an very, very young age, you've competed in 4 back-to-back world championships, winning 3 of them. First ever female to win all 3 IWWF World Water Ski Racing Championship categories. Hats off to you, I say, because I know what it takes to make that sort of thing happen, and it does not come easy. So I just can't thank you enough for giving us the time and the listeners the time to listen to your journey, but also some of the struggles and some of the tears that have happened in the gym, some of the relationship screaming matches that would have happened after training sessions. It's not all sunshine and rainbows, that's for sure. And, we love hearing behind the scenes of some of these amazing athletes in our sport. So thank you very much. I've had a great time chatting to you today, and I can't wait until we can get you on that plane down to Victoria to have some fun with all of us girls again.
Thanks, Chelsea. It was great to get on and kind of talk about my journey and kind of rehash some of the things that I've probably forgotten about. So thank you very much. And thank you for all the kind things you've said about me.
No worries. I look forward to some good times ahead and watching you continue to thrive in the sport of ski racing, but also in the construction industry in your future project management career. So keep the head down, keep in the books. As I said, we all need to have half good careers to pay for the sport, don't we? So when mum and dad stop, it makes it a bit more challenging. I'd give you the hot tip. So yes, you enjoy your time. Say hi to all the loved ones up there. We're thinking of you all in Sydney. Hopefully we can get on top of this Sydney outbreak very quickly, and it's all in the distant future, and we all get back to life as usual, and most important, get back to that adrenaline rush of water ski racing.
Yes, that's for sure. Thanks, Chelsea.
No worries. Look after yourself. Bye-bye.